Welcome to Teaching That Counts, a podcast dedicated to the teaching and learning of mathematics. I'm your host, Abel Maestas, and I love to talk about math education. Together with my amazing guests, we'll explore several topics in the world of math teaching and student learning. Whether it's building thinking classrooms, healing math trauma, building student and teacher math confidence, or creating more equitable math workspaces. If it's going to help students learn math and teachers teach math, then we'll talk about it. So if you're a teacher, a parent like me, admin, or a coach like me, I hope you find something that can inspire you and help build your practice listening to this podcast. You can always find us online at www.teachingthatcountspodcast.com. Yeah, I know that's long, but hey, that's the URL. You can find me on YouTube at Maestas Math or on socials at Maestas Teach. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. Well, welcome to another episode of Teaching That Counts. I'm so glad that you can join me. Man, it has been kind of a wonderful couple of weeks, I have to tell you, since the last podcast. We had spring break, and over spring break, I had the great opportunity to help out two AP teachers, and we called AP Bootcamps, and it's just a chance for students to get ready for their review. We had, for AP Pre-Calculus, we had about 55, 60 students come on their spring break, so 2 days in their spring break, and spend all day with 4 math teachers doing pre-calculus. We talked about strategies for the test. We told them what the test looked like. We broke up into separate rooms, and so we had a little rotation. The kids came in, they got fed some breakfast, some awesome pan dulce from one of our local bakeries, and after breakfast, we told them what they were going to do. Broke them up into 3 groups, and they rotated in classrooms, and we focused on a certain topic of the course, and we did some overview of I did some overview of the test, and then we did a card trick just to get them involved, and then we started working on some multiple choice problems, and allowing the students to look through these multiple choice problems, get their thinking back about what the math looks like, and really start to think to themselves, what do I know and what do I don't know? And so we had them take down that reflection so that as they start to review for the next few weeks for their AP exams, they have an idea of those topics, those specific things that they want to focus on as they get closer to the test. Because as we know, they're going to need practice. They're going to need practice for the specific things that they already know how to do, but they need more practice, more intervention, more stuff, and focused for the things that they need more work on. So we really pinpointed that to give them ownership of what they need to be able to do. So as I told the students, that those days, those AP boot camps, were really as much of them to start practicing as it is for them to know what they don't know, because the more they know what they don't know, then they can focus that in their next few weeks. So we had a good group of kids the first couple of days for AP Pre-Calculus. We had a smaller group for AP Calculus. We only had 15 to 20, but that's also because there's not as many students. And the teacher and I, we did some multiple choice the first day. We talked about the test. We really had them look through a whole exam in groups on vertical non-permanent surfaces, of course, right? They spent their whole day working calculus problems. And then on the second day, they got an opportunity to take free response. First 3 hours, or first hour and a half of the morning was just taking a free response. We graded it real quick, gave it back to them, gave them some feedback, and then we started talking about the pieces and having them work on some other free response problems as they work through. So similar thing, wanting them to get an idea of what they didn't know as they started to practice to prepare their review for the AP exam. So it was it was actually was a wonderful week. You know what? I don't know how much of a good time that the students had. I mean, they were working they were working their minds off, for lack of better terms, right? They were working hard on math, on AP math for 2 days in their spring break, coming on their own. And I had a great time, though. I really enjoyed doing. I mean, I enjoy doing math. That's why I became a math teacher, right? Well, one of the reasons why. But I really had a great time working with the teachers, working with the students, and spending those couple of days. So I don't know if any of them listen to this, but I really want to give them a shout out for all their work that they did over the break and all the work that they're doing coming up over the next couple weeks as they get prepared for the AP exams. And for those teachers out there that teach AP, hey, keep it going. You got a few more weeks. Get those kids prepared. So we are doing some building thinking classrooms in our AP classes, which is pretty awesome. In fact, over the last couple weeks too, I just got a proposal accepted for the Building Thinking Classrooms Conference that is in July, the beginning of July in Phoenix. So I will be presenting along with a teacher here, and we will be presenting on thin slicing your curriculum. So everybody has a district curriculum, right? We every district adopts a curriculum, and sometimes the curriculum works nicely with BTC. Sometimes it doesn't. But how can you take, and I know this is something that goes on in a lot of districts, that the district admins say, hey, we need you to use the curriculum, or the other leaders, or whoever the leadership is saying, look, we need you to use this district adopted curriculum. This is what we want you to use. This is what we want you to use. And we can have great curriculum resources. We can have bad curriculum resources. Whatever we have, we can still turn it into great teaching and great experiences for students. So even if the district says use this curriculum, so we use our session's going to be specifically using illustrative math. Now I just got to say, IM is a great curriculum for BTC, so it's not going to be too hard to see what we do. But I have a great teacher that thin sliced 6, 7, 8, and we're gonna present on that. Not only that, but I sent in a proposal for CMC South. So I haven't gotten the acceptance yet or anything, or even if I'm going to be accepted for this proposal. But I just want to throw this out there because I might send up a blog, or I might do a couple of podcasts on this with the teachers. But our proposal is on putting BTC, using a BTC model, building thinking classrooms in AP math courses, and looking at it as a vertical team. Like, how do we go from, maybe you have honors classes in your high school. How do we go from the right before AP pre-calculus? How do we build up those thinking skills, those vertical non-permanent surface procedures? How do we build that into our students so when they get to AP calculus, they can put together all of those things and just really fly? Because I've been doing vertical non-permanent surfaces. That's just one part of BTC, but I've been doing those in my AP classes for many, many years, and it's worked out. It's really, really worked. So we'll have some teachers, and I'll put them on. We'll have them on the podcast. We'll talk about their experience as well. So if you can't make it out to this, we'll have a podcast for it too. But then again, I don't know if the proposal is going to be accepted. So we'll see. We'll see for that. So a lot of things happening over here. Students are right in the midst of their state testing here in California. So I'm looking optimistic that we have some kids that do well. Now, again, we can't judge any kids by one test, right? It's more than that. They are more than that. And but we want, we're hoping that we see some definite improvement here as we've been working on thinking classrooms. We've been working on our approaches to mathematics here, teaching mathematics for the last couple of years. So On to this episode. So let me talk about this episode that you're going to hear. I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to have a guest on the podcast that I've been looking forward to for about a month or so now. His name is Dr. Aditya Nagrath, and Dr. Nagrath is the founder of Elephant Learning. So if you don't know what Elephant Learning is, it's a website that's supplemental math. It helps students get better at math. It helps students if they have some deficits and they need to improve in some way to go back and get that. So the website, it says that it helps accelerate learning. Could do like a year's worth of math in 3 months, but it really takes some devotion to the program. So we had an opportunity to talk about his program a little bit. He's also the author of two books, Rethinking Math Learning and Treating Math Anxiety, which is his newest book. You can get them on Amazon. And both of these books are about really getting kids to learn mathematics that have been fearful of mathematics for a while. And there's strategies and frameworks that districts, schools, teachers, parents, and the students themselves can use to help heal that math anxiety and get better and feel better about math. So I have a wonderful conversation with Dr. Nagrath about ways that we can start to heal those students in math anxiety, and then boost their self-efficacy. We've been talking a lot about self-efficacy over this last season. We also talk about the systems that continue to perpetuate math anxiety, that continue to put the thoughts in students' heads that I'm not good at math. And how do we start to break those systems? How can we as teachers, coaches, leaders, even parents start to build a positive math identity in our students and stop this I'm not good at math or I'm not a math person talk that we always hear as we go around. And we just talk about those best strategies. I think this is a really good episode for parents of students that might have some math, that might have some anxiety towards math. But I think it's a good episode for anybody that's just into the conversation that's happening right now about math anxiety, about getting kids to really learn math at high levels, and what things that we can be doing to do that. So it was a great conversation with Dr. Nagrath. I'm so happy that he was able to come onto the podcast, and I'm happy to share that with you now. So thanks again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this episode. All right. So welcome to the podcast. I am joined by Dr. Aditya Nagrath, and he is founder of Elephant Learning, which is a online learning program for kids, I believe, pre-kindergarten all the way up to Algebra 1, getting them to learn mathematics at pretty quick levels. So I'm pretty interested in hearing from you on that. And then a new book called Treating Math Anxiety, which I'm really excited to talk to you about. Treating Math Anxiety, your book, because on our podcast, we've talked about treating students with math trauma and how to get kids more confident. You know, we hear a lot of, I'm not a math person. So how do we stop that culture, I guess? You know, how do we stop people from saying, I'm not a math person, and embrace their math identity? So
Right.
so we've got a lot to talk about. If you could introduce yourself to my listeners and what you've done, what you're working on, and then we'll get into talking about those.
Yeah, sure. My name's Dr. Aditya Nagrath, PhD. I got a PhD in math computer science from the University of Denver, 2008. I started a contract software engineering firm where we put, I think it was 35 different product lines to market. It was 50 different applications when you count the different operating systems like iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire, etc. And in 2016, I started Elephant Learning with the mission to empower children with mathematics. Basically, what we learned was that 4 out of 5 students start kindergarten unprepared for the kindergarten curriculum, and it's a language gap. It's a language gap in counting to 10. So most parents think counting to 10 is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And kindergarten means slide over 10 things, and the student's able to stop on 10. And so in one case, they understand what 10 means, and in the other case, they may not. So over time, this gap gets larger because across the country, we don't really tend to hold students back until the third grade. And and this lack of understanding is a natural cause for anxiety. So this is the underlying reason for the math anxiety. But in our book, Treating Mathematics Anxiety, we talk about what the belief system is and how to counter it.
Mm. That's so interesting. You talk about the the difference between what parents understand as mathematics and the and what's happening in the classroom and the teachers and knowing the standards, right? Like I think teachers they understand their standards, but parents when they see count by 10, when they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but really it has so much more to do with the concept of counting by 10, right? Like being able to organize in objects by 10 and then moving that into addition and subtraction and what does it mean to go further on the number line and then later on backwards on the number line. So, what types of things did you see going on with kids at the very young age, where they were, I guess, there was a misconception between what was going on at home, I guess, or what the thoughts were, and what was going on in the classroom to
Well,
get them
this was
prepared as they go
research
along?
and data that was already published.
Mm,
So I didn't personally witness the issue so much as just gain an understanding of the issue and the potential solutions.
yeah. What could parents be doing to help their
Well, so
kids?
the more you use mathematical language around the house, the more they're going to pick up on it. This is typically how children learn languages through inference. It's just that, and I mean, I don't know if it's culture, I don't know what it is per se, but like I had it, and I mean, my parents are from India, and the deal is that people say things like, if you do the math out loud, people will think you're stupid, or you don't want to do the
Mm.
math out loud because then in a negotiation, the other person knows what you're thinking. But like theoretically speaking, at home with your children, you want to do it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking on that, I feel like I was talking to a teacher and we were talking about how kids use their fingers to count. And even in secondary, some students would use their fingers to count. And I think the teacher was a little off put about the student using their fingers to count. And I said, hey, I still use my fingers to count. And I count them out like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I wonder if that just those types of mentalities from culture, from people like you shouldn't be counting out loud, you shouldn't be using fingers, you shouldn't do those things suppresses students a desire to feel like they can make mistakes and to use manipulatives.
Well, in a way, it's a passing on of the math anxiety. It's the
Mm,
underlying belief system replicating itself, right? Because like
right,
the obvious belief that it's false, or I'm sorry, if you look at the belief on the surface, it's false, right? Like
right.
if in a negotiation I started doing the math out loud, guess what's going to help the negotiation? Because the other guy's going to understand what I'm concerned about and then
Yeah.
maybe change their position to make it more fair or, you know what I mean? Like good communication is good communication no matter what. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
like the problem is that like underneath it all is this idea of I can do it and I can't do it. And in the
Yeah.
book, what we talk about is AI systems. They were modeled after how our human brain operates. So, like, very high level, what we're talking about is you're training a function and you have the inputs and the outputs. So, an example would be I got a bunch of images, and the outputs would be the word that the image represents, right?
Right.
And basically the training function cycles the inputs and outputs. Well, with the human being, what's happening is that the experiences that we're having and the meaning that we're adding to the experience, that's kind of the first system that's being trained. And again, where the meaning is fuzzy, anxiety is going to occur. So, like, if you don't understand what the teacher's saying, now you're in it.
Yeah.
So, for mathematics or really any other endeavor that the student wants to engage in, whether it's basketball or whatever, right? It boils down to I can do it or I can't do it. And so the more evidence we give them that they can do it, then the more they believe they can do it, the more they try to do it, and then the more they actually succeed. It's like going to the gym, right? If I
Right.
don't believe I can go to the gym, if I think I'm going to come back dead. Well, then I come back dead. But I stopped believing that as soon as I wrote this book because I mean, now I know I can do it. I can just go and do it. And I come back and I feel fine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the underlying thing. And then the thing that you're talking about here, where we're talking about like someone coming in saying, well, I'm not a math person, or yeah, you shouldn't really count on your fingers. This is the I can't do it side, and they're helping you
Mm.
come up for with excuses or reasons. Well, I mean, I would use my fingers, but I.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's these things that perpetuate the I can't.
That's right.
And
It's the
so,
ego. I mean, it's a fear-based system, so it
right,
doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's trending you in that direction. So that's
right.
reaffirming this idea you can't do it.
Totally, totally. So thinking about that, you have this book, Treating Math Anxiety, and we know that these systems, these beliefs help, um, I kind of see that sometimes there's structures that add to math trauma and math anxiety. And you said like it's passed down. I was talking to a teacher the other day, and we thought, you know, we have elementary school teachers that have had math trauma in their life, math anxiety, and then they pass that to their students because like, oh, well, I'm going to skip math time this time, or we're not going to. I don't want the students to talk to one another about the math because I don't know what they're going to say, and if they say something that I don't know how to answer, I don't know what to do. Like, how do we start to break the mold of that continuing like putting it on students and putting it on students because we got to stop the cycle at some time. So how do we do that?
Well, I mean, you got to believe that the teacher can do it. So,
Yeah,
so that's the teacher has to believe the student can do it. We have to believe the teacher can do it. We got to tell them we believe you can do it. And I mean, we got to give them the resources to do it. In my case, I just give them the system. That's what we give our math coaches because it's like,
right.
okay, well, here's the essential topics according to us. Um,
Yeah,
and if you can get a grasp of this, you can coach them with whatever they need help with because you're just going to use the processes like the Y method to elicit to see what it is the misunderstanding and clarify it.
yeah. So how can your book help teachers, parents, like all of our partners in their education? How can it help heal that math anxiety or just bring it to light?
Well, the exercises within the book were designed to start to pull out what are the meanings that you added around math. You know, it's because like human beings have a story around a lot of things in their life that maybe they're not aware of. Like, for example, themselves, their mom, their dad, men, women, money. But math is on that list. Everyone's got a
Yeah.
story. Everyone's got a relationship with mathematics. And so, like, it's designed to pull that out and then to pull out stories of overcoming adversity, mainly so that you have a repertoire of what we call gestalt that you can
Hmm.
help people with. And this term comes from like business groups where they're like, well, if you do experience share, then this experience share kind of gives the student like a story, your story that they could maybe kind of adapt and
Okay.
with them. And so that's kind of the thing. And in doing so and being able to tell those stories, you should also theoretically overcome your own math anxiety.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, sharing stories is really big. I was part of the NCTM planning committee this last regional, and we did our in our opening session we talked about bringing student voice and stories to mathematics because I really think it's essential that we know the story. Like I think if we know the story, we're able to have a little bit more understanding of where kids are and where teachers are. I'm a coach, so I work with teachers, and there's so many times that teachers are afraid. They have math anxiety. And so part of building that up is just getting them to believe that they can do the math. So once they believe it, then I think that they can then believe that their students can do it. So in your book you have specific tools that they can use or exercises. Can you talk about maybe one or two of those that they might be able to do?
Sure. So like there's there's two overarching strategies. One is to meet the student at their level of understanding, and then the other is to say that you believe they can do it. So then within those overarching strategies, we give them tactics that they could be using. Like when the student's getting emotional, right? Like, so if they're engaging in avoidance tactic, you could start mirroring, meaning that like you could start repeating is this what I'm hearing? I'm hearing you say, right? It might sound like I'm hearing you say that you can't do it because you're stupid, right? Because that's kind of when they're blowing up what they
Right.
might be. And I don't believe that to be true, right? So
Yeah.
like, I think you can do it. And so now we're kind of swinging them back around. Let's take another shot. Let's take another shot. The basketball analogy is another thing. So that this let's take another shot. It comes from this basketball analogy. So like um basketball and mathematics are alike in that anyone can look and see did the ball go in the hoop or not. Um, One way they're not alike is that with mathematics, we feel like we can force the ball into the hoop by maybe providing more help, right? Like if I give them the answer, if I give them a procedure, if I right. And
Yeah.
so like the idea is that like this is kind of also part of the cause of the math anxiety because if in basketball somehow you could shoot for the student, right? If you could help the ball somehow go into the hoop, they would cease believing that they could play basketball. They believe that, whatever magic you just did is what it is.
Yeah.
So like it becomes a tool then to evaluate different situations. Like, well, in this case, should I mirror? Should I tell them to take a break? Should we check if they need water? Maybe they got to go to the restroom, right? Like it depends on the blow up, but like, you see the tools, you see the situations, and pretty soon you start to figure out like, yeah, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. Man, I've never heard the basketball analogy with mathematics quite put that way. That's really enlightening. I used to coach basketball, and I used to tell my math students too. I said, math is not a spectator sport. Like, you can't sit there and watch me play basketball or Kobe Bryant play basketball, LeBron James, whoever, and then expect to now go and play in a game and be the best basketball player. You need to experience basketball. And my job as a teacher is to coach you and facilitate that learning. Like, I can't play for you. I'm not the one that's going to be dribbling up the court. And I think a lot of times, like you said, teachers dribble the ball for the kids.
Yeah,
Um,
parents and teachers tend to do that. I mean, like again, that's why this is one of our main tools, even like in our coaching program at Elephant Learning when they call in. Think about it like basketball, because then, like the parent can get out of their head with the anxiety around mathematics, like, oh, it's wrong, right? And they can get into, well, okay, the ball doesn't go in the hoop every time, and it's okay.
yeah. Yeah. And then what fixes are we going to make so the ball does go in the hoop, right? That's
Exactly.
what
And then
learning
redirect
is.
them to the next shot. Cause like I
Yeah.
got that one from that Adam Sandler movie. I think it's called Hustle. I looked it up the other
Oh,
day.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like somewhere in the movie, he said, look, for the coach, it's always about the next shot. It's always about the next shot. And we gotta, and that's the same thing, right? Like, hey, look, this one didn't go in, but it's okay. Next shot. I think the next one's gonna go in. What are we gonna do? Like, and the thing is with learning versus basketball, every missed shot is a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's so many connections with sports and mathematics. So many analogies that you can make because I think golf. I played a lot of golf. I was a golf coach, and I told my players, like, so you get a bad hole, right? You didn't do well. You got another one coming up. You know, what are the fixes that you could make? What are the things that are going what are the strategies you're going to employ? Because it's always another hole and another opportunity. And I think we can treat mathematics as another opportunity for kids. I love the idea of Peter Liljedahl had this in his book about making math opportunities for learning. It just changes the mindset of students. Um, and I love that. So I love that analogy. I think I'm going to use that analogy, basketball. So on the podcast, we talk a lot about equity. I tend to to really, it's something that's important to my in my heart about making equitable mathematics, equitable access, equitable grading. I've been working with equitable grading a lot. So my wonder for you is, um, your program, like it's Elephant Learning, or the couple of books. I know you wrote another book called Rethinking Math Learning. How can healing math anxiety, even maybe your program, Elephant Learning, how can those help bring more equity in mathematics?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think first, like I mean, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by the equity in mathematics.
So, so really, we know that what I mean by equity is that we know that when there's a lot of systems that cause students to think that they're not math people, right? Not math people. I can't do math. We talked a lot about this.
I'm
And a
following, yeah.
lot of times when you see the data, many of those students are students of color. So how do
Well, the
we,
data we looked at was broken down by income level,
oh,
and
and income level. That's another
yeah,
piece of equity. So
it
income level,
turned out.
how do we provide those resources for kids that don't have those resources? Like, growing up, once I got to a certain place, I didn't have anybody that can help me at home. And nobody can help me at home. My parents didn't make enough money to send me to a tutoring center to take SAT prep classes. Like all those things weren't available to me. But other kids had them because they had money. How do we help kids that don't have those resources?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, what we're doing over at Elephant Learning is we got a scholarship program, and I think that there's a lot of resources out there. So it's just trying to get them the knowledge of the resources that are out there. And I mean, it's really challenging, I think, because you got two things going against the particular student, which is that uh, maybe there's not a lot of parental support at home, so they're not hearing necessarily a lot of language where clarification could happen. And I think that the other thing is that, yeah, because the parents are so busy, they're not really looking necessarily for the resources. They kind of have to receive the resources. So I mean, I guess like if programs like ours were recommended by schools, it could work, right? Like, hey, they got a scholarship program. It's only going to be $10 a month for you guys, and et cetera, right? Like that could be one way. But really, I mean, if we could just get Elephant Learning or something like it into the schools where we can ensure that the essential topics are just understood. What we found out was that the 4 out of 5 students they start underprepared for kindergarten. It all happens along income lines, but then if you look at the same chart over time, meaning from age 6 to age 12, the percentile of the student didn't increase. So like it was again broken down by income, except for the top one. And what that means is that the education system actually works if the student can understand the teacher. And so then the goal should be, can we just get the level of language to the level of the classroom, which is what we built Elephant Learning to do. So like if we
Hmm.
could just get you to participate in class, you might not know how to add with the clock because you didn't understand that. But like, I mean, you'll pick it up, right?
Yeah.
And but you'll be able to multiply at least, and you'll be able to participate at third grade and what they're talking about there. And then now you feel like you can do it. So you're in the system, you're working.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How does your system to do that? I know that I saw that it does it could build up to a year of learning in pretty quick time, like I think it said 3 months.
Yeah.
Um, so how does it do that for kids?
So what we did was we designed a system using the latest early age education research and combined that with adaptive algorithms that are extremely effective, meaning that I can very quickly, within 30 minutes, maybe determine your level of understanding, depending if you set it up correctly, right? I do it based on age, and theoretically speaking, if maybe your student's further behind, you might want to set it down, or if you know your student's ahead, you could set it up. But very quickly, we find their initial level of understanding. It was designed to gear the adaptive algorithms to just kind of start them in the right spot. And then from there, we feed them the activities that were bound to be most effective at teaching those particular ideas, potentially modified because it's a gamification. And I think that when we measure it, and we have a research paper up on our website, on average, children are learning about 1.67 years of mathematics over the course of 13 weeks, using
Mm,
it just under 40 minutes per week.
wow. How you know, in many of the schools that I work at, we have RTI, response to intervention. Can this be used at maybe like in a school for an intervention for students that need like I guess really basic skills that are really low on the I guess we would call them tier three intervention.
Yeah, so we've had students that are 12 years old in the scholarship application, the parents saying they're testing out at a third grade level through whatever remediation program they're at. And we've seen them testing at the third grade level in our system and come up into algebra. So like effectively catching up, because if you can start to understand algebra, then you can participate in most upper level mathematics.
Yeah, do you by chance have any data on how those students tend to do in their normal classes after being caught up?
I'm not able to follow them, but I mean, what we get on the other side is either like we do a case study and we try to follow up with them,
Yeah.
um, or we get testimonial coming back, and then maybe we can go look up the account and see, like, oh, can we make a case study using the testimonial? But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to follow someone once they've left our system.
Yeah, I would assume the human data on just their confidence level has is pretty good, right? Like the testimonial data maybe that kids feel much more confident after taking the program and in their classes they feel more confident in mathematics. Do you have any of that? Like do you get
Yeah,
testimonials
basically,
on
I
that?
mean, the ones that stand out to me are the ones that say that, like, hey, that my kid went from hating mathematics to loving mathematics. We turned one into an ad and we just push it out there. Because, like, I mean, they might come out, they might say, you know what, I hate elephant learning, but I like math class now. And you know what, I consider that a win, because the goal was to empower the child with mathematics. And if that student is able to walk into whatever classroom and participate in that classroom and enjoy it, because, you know, the thing is math is actually fun in the classroom when you understand what's going on. It feels like puzzle games, right? It feels like a puzzle game in the classroom. Our system feels like a puzzle game, but you can do it. You can do it out of a book. You can do it out of our system, and yeah, that's our goal.
That's awesome. Yeah. Math is definitely a puzzle game. I think that you know, you and I are on the same page on what our goal is to get kids to love math and to stop saying I'm not a math person. You cannot imagine how many times I go around and somebody asks, "Oh, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a math teacher." And they go, "Ooh, wow. I was never a math person." Like that's it's either going to
I'm
be,
not
"Oh,
seeing the
I
same
was never
thing.
a math person," or like, "Wow, that's pretty cool. I enjoyed math," or it's wow, that's got you got to be really smart. That's really hard. Like those are the three things I get.
Well, so the statistics are this: almost half of first and second graders already report math anxiety. Half of all Americans report math anxiety. The number's closer to 75%
I mean, that
because,
makes me sad. That just makes me
yeah.
sad.
So 75% of students kind of get lost around fractions, decimals, and percentages. It's just changing nomenclature on how we write the numbers. And then when you get to algebra and you see 1/4 x, like, I don't even know what any of this is. So, like, why keep going? So, but like the thing is though that, like, it kind of feels like you can get around and do things. But the more you look, the more you find out that actually what mathematics is, it's defined as like the tool that we use to solve almost any problem. So like when you start talking about equity, that's why I wanted to make sure I understood what you were talking about, because you could be talking about like how do we equitably divide things, and that would be game theory, for example. We study a whole bunch of different games and how, like, what are the winning strategies, or how could you cut a cake fairly? If you got to cut it three ways, what is the algorithm to cut it fairly? And there's proofs to show that this is the optimal solution. So, I mean, this is sort of the thing, is that, like, it's weird because everything that we have around us that we value, like I pull out my iPhone, I look at the GPS, it's the result of a lot of engineering based on a lot of mathematics. And I mean, but we don't use math for anything.
Right? I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, math is beautiful and creative and problem solving and visualization and playing games, and you use math every day and you don't even know it. And I truly believe that. I would love for people to believe that too, for everyone to believe that too.
It is actually what it is. I mean, the problem is that if you understood the math, then you're using it as a tool and it's subconscious at this point.
Yeah.
But if you didn't understand the math, the question is where am I ever going to use this? And everyone else is thinking, I mean, I don't even know because you're
Right.
using it subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? I appreciate this conversation. Really enjoyed this talking to you about how do we change the minds of everyone, and most importantly, get kids on track, because I think that we can get all kids there. I think we can get all kids there. So, Dr. Nagrath, thank you for joining me on Teaching That Counts. I want you to be able to tell us where we can find you, where we can find information on your program, your books, all those things, so that way the listeners can go out and find you right now. So, can you just let us know where we can find you before we end our podcast?
Sure. If you want to learn about elephant learning, just go to elephantlearning.com. The Treating Math Anxiety book is also up there, but you can find that on Amazon. And you can follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, because like we tend to post there. You can also try to follow us on other social media, but I don't know, like we don't tend to post there.
Okay, so Facebook and Instagram,
Yeah,
main
and LinkedIn.
places. Okay, and LinkedIn. Okay, excellent. And would that be Elephant Learning?
Elephant Learning, or if you find me as well, you can follow me. I'll double post.
Okay, awesome, excellent. Well, thank you again for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.